I've come up with a practical use for Myers-Briggs temperament indicator that you've likely never heard of. So, for those who haven't seen my recent videos, I came up with this whole formula for streamlining character construction. It starts with determining a character's archetype, then layers in the Enneagram, adds in Myers-Briggs temperament indicator after that, extrapolates information to the Reese motivation profile, and finally creates a character history to bridge gap between their external appearance and internal world. A question I've been excited to address is, why is MBTI after the Enneagram? This brings us to the nature of these two. The Enneagram as a tool is focused on why an individual behaves in a certain way, their core motivations. Myers-Briggs, meanwhile, describes how an individual processes information and interacts with the world. I like to think of the Enneagram as the engine, while MBTI is the steering mechanism, guiding an individual's moves based on the internal drives defined by the Enneagram. Or, another way to put it, the archetype is what's on stage for the world to see, the Enneagram is why this performance is going on to begin with, and Myers-Briggs covers how the performance unfolds. So, with that in mind, Myers-Briggs works by breaking down perception and decision-making into cognitive functions. There's a lot I could say on those, but to keep it on an introductionary basis, there are 8 possible functions, with each MBTI having a unique stack combination with 4 of the possible functions. These stacks themselves are the dominant, auxiliary, tertiary, and inferior. You can think of them as different gears a person shifts into depending on the circumstances. The dominant is our home base, your default gear. This is how someone operates most of the time. It's how one naturally perceives and interacts with the world. Awareness of each character's specific trait is key here. So, for instance, my protagonist Cassidy is an ENTJ, so her default is extroverted thinking. She's naturally commanding, organized, and driven by efficiency and logic in her everyday interactions and decisions. The auxiliary function is the support gear, for when in planning/thinking mode. It becomes more visible when someone is more focused, particularly when they're thinking or deciding on something. It ultimately supports the dominant. So, with portraying Cassidy, I focus on her introverted intuition, which is basically showing her predicting problems before they happen and devising plans that span long operations. She's always future-oriented when in this mode. The tertiary function is the personal gear. This is where a character's personal preference and qualities that might not be immediately visible to others comes into play. They manifest when a character matures and becomes more comfortable tapping into this side, or are in a more relaxed or familiar environment. This gear can also provide a comforting retreat and source of enjoyment and personal expression, especially under stress or during leisure. I found this is great for writing lighter moments. Cassidy has extroverted sensing, which translates to her having a zest for sensory experiences and physically interacting with the world. I tap more into an action-oriented side, this being the part of her who enjoys the thrill, shows more of an appreciation for aesthetics. I portray her taking in and enjoying the vividness of everything, enjoying luxuries, and more invested in the tangibles. It's the side of her I'm showing for more of in this short I have in production. Last, but not least despite the name, is the inferior function, which we'll call the stress gear. I'm sure you can understand what it is based on the name. Individuals engage in this when under stress or in weak moments. This is where they're at their most vulnerable, and just how they act when they're at the most uncomfortable with or out of depth. Typically, this is seen when the 3 others priors have all failed, but this is also something the person wishes to master about themselves, to become comfortable with. When I'm writing Cassidy, I have this show up to challenge Cassidy in moments that deal with her personal values and emotions conflicting with her logic. So, for example, the entirety of the Grandmaster of Theft series begins with Cassidy's logic-driven side coming into conflict with her values and her struggle to reconcile the two. She just isn't always the best with her personal vulnerabilities and situations that stress her out. It's also why I made the series' main antagonist someone who targets that very quality. So yeah, using this method, I can extrapolate so much about a character in each scenario I have. It helps me big time when it comes to creating believable characters. If you would like some help applying this to your own characters, or have questions about it, ask away in the comments. I'm happy to help where I can when I have the time. To note, if you want to help free up my time so I can do more for the writing community, consider joining the channel membership. One of my dreams is to gain enough members so that I can have more time to produce much more for everybody, while still having my private life.